Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Noding. In this episode, I'm gonna use Sverchok add-on and animation add-on basically to convert like BVH armature, like a motion capture data into uh, this kind of instance mesh, kind of like replacing every single bone with in this case, like a cylinder that looks like a cone. So yeah, it's gonna be kind of interesting because normally if you have like a BVH armature, it's just like a bones with the motion data. It's kind of moving. You can see the bones. It's fine. But I kind of wanna have a way to convert the bones, animated bones, into a mesh. So in this case, the final result will be like this kind of like instancing of objects on top of the bones. And you can actually bake every bones. It's almost like parenting, or actually it's more like a drivers for each objects to follow the bones animations and orientations, and you can also bake it. I think this can be improved over time, but for now it's just keep it simple. So I started with a cylinder. Basically, I'm using Sverchok for the cylinder objects. Animation nodes actually have a cylinder mesh generator as well, but I'm not using it at the moment. I don't know how to wire, because with a cylinder mesh here, I don't know how we can wire the axis rotations for the cylinder. With Sverchok, I can easily change that using the vector rewire right here. So for the cylinder, I basically set it up so the cylinder is like pointing in the positive y-axis, and I make it so it looks a bit like a cone, so we can see the directions clearly. So I get the cylinder, and I'm kind of placing the cylinder in the center just in case if I want to kind of change this the length of the cylinder. So I think that's pretty clear. Just basically a cylinder. There's a bit of a tweak here just to make the cylinder looks correct, and then I'm using viewer bmesh kind of to output the cylinder, and I put it in different layer. And the next thing I did was to use animation node simply to grab that cylinder generated by Sverchok, this alpha 0, and using it as object instancer. And the next thing I did was to use I actually bring in this motion capture data, import BVH, and the one I'm using is actually from, I think, the University of Ohio, if I'm not wrong. BVH Ohio, I name it, and they have some motion capture data, so I always use that one. Very nice. And after I import that BVH, I simply reference it, just source it here using the Armature Info nodes of animation nodes. So this thing is very handy. You can set it to pose or resting state, but normally you can also do it from here. If you select the BVH data, you can go here and then choose the resting position. This one has a weird resting position, but normally it's like a standing position. So, okay, this is the animated character being generated on the fly. You can bake this easily. Just go to animation nodes and then just overview and bake to keyframes. Every single object's instant here will be keyframe, and then you can export it into game engine if you want to do it that way. Sometimes actually you probably prefer to use like a skin bone with weighting and stuff, but in this case it's just like just the object itself. They're all separate. Okay, so what I did here is basically using all these informations from the armature. I'm not using the matrices in this case, just using the center of the bones, and the direction of the bones for the rotation, and the length actually goes into this guy, and I can still control the thickness of every part of the bones. Maybe if I want to make this a little bit better, maybe if I control the radius for each bone, sort of like that. Maybe the head is slightly bigger, maybe this foot slightly smaller and the hand slightly smaller, you know, just like a human limbs. It doesn't have to be like that exactly. So yeah, just pipe in everything and we get something like this. And in case you want to change the BVH data, you can do that quite easily as well. I'll save this real quick, this one. And let me try that, actually import another BVH data, and this time I'll use a female human motion capture data. So let's try this one, run to pick up box. I'll make sure the scale is 0.01 and everything else, or actually scale FPS maybe. Yeah, I think we need to scale the FPS, otherwise it doesn't match our scene. So import BVH, and I should get another motion capture data here, this BVH. And if everything runs correctly, I can simply replace it here. Just grab it and we get our objects there being generated on the fly. And the advantage of this is that really if we like select all by type mesh, so this guy, if we jump back into Sverchok, for example, and you are using like objects in MK3, get selection, and you are using the mesh data. Let's say make sure I'm applying the transformations first, because transformation is still like live data from the BVH into animation nodes and then so on. You can end up with something like this guy. See, just the points, and you can actually merge it into a single mesh. Now it's actually inside Sverchok. There is this one frame delay thing, so be careful with that. Be careful with this. Just because the way Sverchok handles the data, there's this one delay things happening sometimes. We can probably fix that by using the baking. Well, actually, if you okay, just now I just plug it in into the polyline viewer, and it gives me this kind of like a rubbery man, like a Michelin character, maybe, if you remember. Yeah, anyway, so this bone now is like live from the BVH motion capture data, goes into animation nodes, and then goes into Sverchok, and you get this character that you can bake into Alembic if you like. Yeah, pretty cool. And so I guess that's pretty much it actually for this live noding. I'll give you this setup for you to try. This is actually pretty fun. Once this thing become like another mesh, you can actually join it in Sverchok and then use particle with it and do whatever, just to generate like a live mesh structure on the fly. You know, you can do a lot of things. Yes, so hopefully you find this one useful. Let me know what you think, if you have any question or suggestion to add to this. Yeah, thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.